a pleasure to be able to introduce to you our speaker, Joshua Apter, a graduate of Germantown Academy and an accomplished film director and entrepreneur. Mr. Apter truly contributed to GA during his time here. He was the class officer and the president of the senior class, and he performed in the Belfry production of Grease, and he was a member of track, football, lacrosse, and soccer teams. He won many awards, including the Nahill Memorial Award and the Shepherd Memorial Prize for English. Mr. Apter continued his studies at University of Pennsylvania, and then went to graduate school at New York University, where one of his films was honored with the Martin Scorsese Award for Achievement in Directing. In 2002, Josh founded the Manhattan Edit Workshop, a school that teaches and refines editing skills. In 2002, he created Padcaster, an invention that converts the iPad into professional film equipment. The Padcaster was recently featured in Apple's "What Will Your Verse Be" commercial. Please give a warm welcome back to Mr. Apter and also to Jon Goldberg, who began at GA in lower school. In upper school, he played hockey all 4 years and was a captain in senior year. He played tennis for 2 years and was in business club for junior and senior year, Spanish club, and ski club, each for 1 year. After GA, he attended Boston University, where he studied business and finance. Before launching the Padcaster in 2012, Jon was a venture capitalist in another entrepreneurial business for 17 years. Please give a warm welcome back to these two guests.
Thank you. That was the nicest thing anyone's ever said about me, ever. It should be, I should want to clarify, at this school, certainly, yes. I barely played football, it should be known. I was the guy on the bench. I played one play the entire season, and I got hurt during that play. But I did embarrass myself on this very stage in Greece, and it's amazing that we're back here, and it's a very strange. I was talking to Heather saying, you usually feel like these places get smaller when you come back. This place feels exactly the same. It's great to be here. Jon and I are going to talk to you about what we're doing and how the fact that we met here in 6th grade and really didn't like each other at first turned into a friendship and a business partnership. So,
well, we were opposites. So, well, that's good for the rest of this presentation. All I can say is, wow, I never thought I'd be back here.
It's true. And this is like a packed house. Literally, you guys have nowhere, you can't go anywhere. So we have undivided attention for the next 35 minutes.
If we do a bad job, it's because some of these teachers didn't teach me well enough. So it's not our fault. Actually, the last time I heard an applause like that was graduation, when every teacher and administrator clapped so heavily to see me get out of here.
And now you're back.
And now it's ironic that I'm back.
So we understand that there is there's actually a big entrepreneurship focus at this school that didn't really exist when we were here. I think it's great that happened. And I didn't know what your reaction would be to something like this. So we're going to talk to you about the business that we started, our backgrounds, and and it's great to know that you're plugged into that as students. I think when I was this age, I really, it wasn't really on my mind. It's a great thing that that's something that is brought to students this age at this point. So we'll try not to bore you. Jon's going to start talking, and I'm going to start reacting to him lovingly.
Well, thanks. You can see we're a great pair here. So we'll keep this very informal. We're not going to go through every slide and read every word. But the idea here is to just give you an introduction of who we are, how we sort of came about, the Padcaster, give a general idea of entrepreneurship, some of the risks, some of the rewards. We'll talk about Padcaster, the company, so you get an idea of what that is, and then we'll conclude and do some Q&A if we have some time. So we'll just go back and forth here.
Yeah. So I'm only going to say next slide, please. That's it, as far as I go.
Perfect. So, obviously they said that we were here in 6th grade, and we met in 6th grade and hated each other, and I think we fought a few times, but and we were opposites. So as you can see, Josh, why don't you give a little bit of your background?
Well, I can also talk a little bit about it later on, but I think the fact that we're not the same is exactly what gives this business and our partnership some strength, is that I come at it from the creative filmmaker side. I started making movies at this school, in this building, in a gentleman named George Nista's class. I never stopped, even after starting the film editing school and, you know, and Padcaster. It's always been about storytelling for me. So, you know, I think where I'm an educator and a filmmaker and somewhat an accidental inventor, I've always had my head up in the clouds. And John, if you want to speak of it, has always been sort of grounded and in more practical endeavors.
Well, yeah, I mean, actually, it started here. Do you guys still do senior projects here? So my senior project was at the time, you know, at a Wall Street investment firm. So I got a little, you know, dip my toes in the water there, and then I went to Wall Street after I graduated college, and then I got into the venture capital business for about 17 years before coming over to Padcaster. So yeah, I mean, my background, having done all that, was, you know, I've seen, you know, thousands of business plans and thousands of entrepreneurs and thousands of startups. Some I invested in, some didn't go well, and some went okay. But you know, Josh always bounced some ideas off of me. You know, so I guess the important thing is we've remained friends since 6th grade, even though we hated each other then. We've stayed in touch and remained close friends throughout. And Josh was always bouncing ideas off of me of, you know, many different things. In fact, we started a couple of businesses here that we can't.
We're not allowed to talk about some of the endeavors that we undertook while we were in high school, but it's important to say we didn't hate each other for 6th through 12th. We became very close friends, and we did a lot of things together so that even through college and graduate school, we were always in touch with each other. It's sort of these relationships where you could not see someone for 3 years and then sit down and pick up right where you left off. And so if there were ever ideas like this, I can think about how to make something like this or what it's supposed to do, but then how does this exist in the real world? Is it something when someone says, hey, you should sell that? That's where I would go to John and say, you know, I've been hearing this a lot. What does that mean? What do you think?
Right, and you know, and we were looking at starting something, and not necessarily Padcaster. We talked about a dozen different ideas over the past 5 or 6 years, and we spent a lot of time analyzing them, going over them, seeing if we could get something off the ground, and then Josh launched Padcaster about 4 years ago.
Yeah, it was completely an accident,
which we'll get into.
Which we'll get into later, but we're never going to get past our first slide.
No, right? But anyway,
I just saw that we had 10 minutes left.
The bottom line is he launched it 4 years ago, and you know, fortunately to date has achieved a lot of growth and success. And I joined about a year ago to sort of getting back to this run the business side of things, while Josh still develops, you know, on the creative side.
Is your next slide the big movie slide?
No.
Okay.
So there's the clipper. So here's what we're doing today. We already talked about it. So we'll talk about entrepreneurship, some of the characteristics, risks, rewards, Padcaster, and Q&A. And then we'll start with this movie. And before we do that, you know, I'll tell you, it's a movie that you'll all know. It's about a prison break. So you know, but there are a lot of themes within the movie from this clip that have to do with being an entrepreneur, and then we'll use that as sort of we'll set up the whole rest of the presentation of how a prison break sort of permeates into being an entrepreneur. So, if you want to hit play.
I understand you're a man that knows how to get things.
I'm known to locate certain things from time to time.
I wonder if you might get me a rock hammer.
What?
A rock hammer.
What is it and why?
What do you care?
Well, if it was a toothbrush, I wouldn't ask questions. I just quote a price, but then a toothbrush is a non-lethal object, isn't it?
Fair enough. Rock hammer is about 6 or 7 inches long. Looks like a miniature pickaxe. For rocks.
Rocks. Quartz.
Quartz. Some mica. Shale. Limestone.
So?
I'm a rock hound. At least I wasn't my whole life. I'd like to be again on a limited basis.
Or maybe you'd like to sink your toe into somebody's skull.
No, sir. I haven't led me to.
No? Wait a while. We'll get around. If I were you, I'd grow eyes in the back of my head.
Thanks for the $50.
Well, that's free. You understand my concern?
Well, if there's any trouble, I won't use the rock hammer, okay?
Then I guess you won't escape tunnel under the wall, then. I missed something here. What's funny?
You'll understand when you see the rock hammer.
In 1966, Andy Dufresne escaped from Shawshank Prison. All they found of him was a muddy set of prison clothes, a bar of soap, and an old rock hammer, damn near worn down to the nub. I remember thinking it would take a man 600 years to tunnel through the wall with it. Old Andy did it in less than 20. Oh, Andy loved geology. I imagine it appealed to his meticulous nature. An ice age here, million years of mountain building there. Geology is the study of pressure and time. That's all it takes, really. Pressure and time. That and a big lead poster. Like I said, in prison, a man will do most anything to keep his mind occupied. Turns out, Andy's favorite hobby was toting his wall out into the exercise yard. A handful at a time. I guess after Tommy was killed, Andy decided he'd been here just about long enough. Andy crawled to freedom through 500 yards of smelling foulness I can't even imagine. Or maybe I just don't want to. 500 yards. That's the length of 5 football fields. Just shy of half a mile.
So you want to be an entrepreneur. So that movie, that clip really, we'll go over some of the themes, but that really embodies from beginning to end what an entrepreneur is in starting a company, a business, and taking it from the beginning, seeing the vision, executing on it, and utilizing the resources that you need, and then in the end, hopefully triumphing. So we'll talk about those themes throughout, but that really embodies, what it is. So given that I said, you want to be an entrepreneur, this is the best time to be an entrepreneur. Never in, since 1996 or 95, really when the dot-com boom started, there have been so many businesses started. Entrepreneurship is thriving, startups are thriving, investment in startups is thriving, support of startups and entrepreneurs is thriving. So really, it is the best time, and it has been the best time for a couple decades to be in the startup business, to be an entrepreneur. And and being an entrepreneur doesn't necessarily mean you have to start Facebook. You could start, a shop down the road. You could be in a family business. It can be big, it can be small, it can get, invested in by a venture capitalist. You can start it, and support it yourself. So all these things are startups. All these things, are being entrepreneurial. And I think that's the point. Is you don't have to be Facebook to be successful and to be an entrepreneur. And a lot of things are driving this. As you can see, I'm not going to read through all the bullet points, but there's a shift in the dynamics of what's going on, whether it's technological innovation, whether it's corporate, the way corporate downsizing works, or creativity. All of this is making it possible, for entrepreneurs to be successful, and to go out and launch a business. So, I don't know if you want to add anything.
I was just going to say that we were talking about, if not Padcaster, starting a cheesesteak truck in New York, which is, and you say you don't have to start Facebook. It seems like, how could you not want to start a cheesesteak truck
in Philadelphia?
In Philadelphia, right?
So, I would say, like the clip of the movie, this slide sort of embodies also, so what is it that you're getting into? So you could go down the path, follow the yellow line, drive straight, sort of, or like Andy, stay in prison, do your time, and get out 30 years later. Entrepreneurs tend to not accept what it is, what the current circumstances they're in. They, for whatever reason, either they're frustrated, they have different ideas, they have bigger ideas, whatever it is, they take an exit. They veer off the yellow line, and, as the cliche goes, take the road less traveled. And sometimes there's bumps in that road, but that's really what it is.
Yeah, also add, I think, coming to this school, I'm not sure how aware I was of like this expected trajectory, and so that it's not that I said, I'm going to not go down this road and consciously go down the other. I was just sort of following an interest and seeing how I could build what I wanted to out of that interest. And I think that, I don't know, being here and feeling empowered to do that had a lot to do with it.
Well, once you take the exit, it's like, I always tell people, being in the corporate world is like being in a revolving door, and you just keep going around and around, or you keep driving down the road. Once you get out of the revolving door, once you take the exit, you don't know what's going to happen. And I think, again, that's part of being an entrepreneur is, you figure it out once you get off the exit and you take the other road. Who knows what's going to happen? So there's really, quickly, there is no definition of what an entrepreneur actually is. There's if you Google it, there's thousands of definitions. So there's really no way of defining what it is. At the end of the day, you could pick one of these bullet points, but it's really being willing to have a vision and being willing to take the risk to go execute on that vision and see it through. And there's risks, there's rewards, and some people find it very fulfilling. So, but there is no real, they all sort of say different things and they all sort of say the same thing. At the end of the day, you just need to take the initiative to go do it if you want to do it, and follow your passion, and follow your dream, and then go make it happen. The one thing I would say is, most successful entrepreneurs will tell you they never do any of this for the money. They do it because they have a passion and they want to pursue it. And if it's successful and it becomes, worth billions of dollars, great. But that's never why nobody ever gets into it to be a billionaire. So.
Wait, we're not in this to be billionaires?
Well, we are, but that's not.
We're going to need a minute, everybody.
Wow. Yeah, again, it's a busy slide, but the point is not to read through the slide. It's just, repeating a lot of the same things, and we'll go back to the Shawshank Redemption clip. Let's just go through some of these points. Andy didn't accept what being in prison. He had a passion of geology and looking at rocks and playing chess, and he decided to pass his time. He would basically use his knowledge to find the different rocks to carve chess pieces. And then he used his resources and his networking to find Morgan Freeman, who was the guy who could get things. But he had to be resourceful enough to find him. And once he found him, he realized that he needed that hammer. And the hammer was really not meant to break out of prison. The hammer was meant to pursue his passion of making chess pieces and using his knowledge of geology to carve the rocks. Well, as you saw, what ended up happening is he obviously tried to carve his name into the wall, and a chunk of the wall came out. And I think that's the other important thing about being an entrepreneur is once that happened, he had to seize the opportunity. He realized there was something there. He used his knowledge of, again, of rocks and geology and soil and realized the wall was soft. But he had to be smart enough and take the initiative to actually do something about that. So he got that poster, which was also resourceful. He obviously did his research to figure out when the guards walked by or didn't walk by. And he spent the next 18 years carving out a tunnel with that little tiny thing, which I think is the next important thing about being an entrepreneur is persistence.
What's the seal around Germantown Academy? What is it? We shall see the fruit by perseverance. Is that actually what it says? I haven't laid eyes on it in 30 years, so something must have stuck. Am I?
No. So I think that you're right. So he persevered through it, and then in the end, when he crawls through that tunnel, it's a sacrifice. I mean, who wants to crawl through 500 yards of a sewer?
But I feel like we're still crawling through on some
but
level.
that's what it is. It's you don't see all the things that go into in the end when he raises his hand in victory. All those things are needed, and if you read through all these bullet points, those are a lot of the characteristics of what it takes to do it. So that's what we put the clip up. Obviously, it was a big risk. He could have gotten caught. Any number of things could have happened while he was doing it. So that's the other thing. Why do you do it? I mean, again, we're not going to read through it, but you do it because you want to follow your passion. You do it because you don't want to accept where you are, and you have some, bigger calling or bigger destiny or bigger vision. And you want to go do it. You want to pursue it.
Yeah, I don't know when the right time is. I can tell the sort of long and windy road in the short version of how this all came to be. I just don't want to jump ahead in the slides.
Well, I'm going to pass it off to you because, that was, again, in many ways this is very hard because I could spend a whole year talking about entrepreneurship. We have to do it in 40 minutes. So it's hard to buzz through this, but I'm going to pass it off to Josh now. So we'll talk a little bit about the Padcaster and about, the journey of where it is and what you see up here. But Josh, saw an idea, he evaluated it, and then spent the next, 3 years developing it to what you see, up here today. And so he'll walk you through a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, I think on some level, I've spent 30 years developing it because, I've been making movies since, I guess I want to say 9th grade here at school. A film workshop. Is there still a film making workshop at GA?
Let him know when you're going to play the clip.
We'll play the clip when I'm done. Yes, there's a filmmaking workshop? All right, there was a Super 8 film workshop here when I was in, I guess, 9th grade or 10th grade, and it sort of changed the whole thing. And since then, it's really been about telling stories, learning things, and that's led to, film school at NYU, and then being a film editor, too, because that was always the place where I could learn about filmmaking. There's no better place to learn all the mistakes than by cutting together somebody else's and trying to fix them. And then from the editing of films to starting a film editing school, where I could sort of take more active control over the work that I was doing as a filmmaker and a film editor. But if I, when I was here, if you had said, look at the list of these qualities or these things and execute that so that you can start something, I would have said you were crazy. I just wanted to make movies. And making movies turned into a practical endeavor of editing them, which turned into a larger endeavor of teaching other people to edit them and to shoot them, which turned into, seeing a solution that was more like a sketch pad for people who were learning. Because my day film was expensive. taking something like this where you can shoot, edit, and upload the project, and if it doesn't work, just swipe it and delete it, that seemed to address another thing. And then of course, every step along the way, what I was doing ended up showing me a tremendous amount, and I ended up learning what the iPad is capable of, or what this film editing school and what being part of that community in New York can teach me. So, you know, I guess what we'll do is we'll show you the result of this, because a lot of people look at this and say, I can't believe you're, you know, taking an hors d'oeuvre tray and shooting movies on it. It doesn't really look right. But iPad and iPhone are absolutely viable content creation tools. So we'll start this. This is just like a minute of stuff that was all shot on iPad and iPhone, and with the Padcaster. Yeah, it's very important to say, I guess, because it does stabilize this stuff pretty well. And then we'll talk a little bit more about how that business, you know, really started and how it got us together later. Said, I started this school about 12 years ago. We trained all Apple added Adobe software, you know, it basically was the place that led me to this, but very indirectly. John we both have a story about how it all started. Essentially, it was there when I needed it, and it wasn't the camera that I would have preferred. As a matter of fact, I hated the iPad when it came out because it didn't have a camera in it, and I looked at it as just another way for my kids to waste time watching and buying things. But when there was suddenly a camera in there, I kind of figured this is now a two-way street, and it's a way to, you know, bring something in, take something and give something back. When it in fact substituted beautifully for footage that was shot on better cameras, it was sort of an aha moment, one of many along the process where, you know, I said, under the right circumstances, this stuff looks pretty good. You know, people are shooting digital now, just a fact of life, and they're shooting, you know, qualities that, in a sense, are well beyond these. I mean, these phones now are shooting like 4K resolution, which is mind-boggling. But when I saw what it could do, I started taking it to these trade shows and conventions and shooting interviews with friends of ours who were exhibitors and showing off their products, and they're trained to be on point. They can tell you about their product and why you should buy it and where you can find them in 90 seconds. So I had this iPad clamped to a shoulder mount, really it wasn't a rig at the time, and said, all right, you're Jay from AJA. And I said, tell me everything you need to tell me. It's like Twitter for video in 90 seconds. He told me, I cut the bumpers and I uploaded it to the internet from the iPad. And so when he said, when's it going to be online? I'll tell people to go look at it, like a week or two. And I said, no, it's up. And that's kind of another big moment where people said, wait a minute, what did you just do? Because until then, you have to shoot this footage, pull it off, put it in an editing system, cut it, and then do whatever you're going to do with it. The idea that this is a vertically integrated production studio from even concept to production to post makes it very unique. There's no other camera this good out there that can do all of that. That's when I said, all right, I think maybe there's something here. I built a very rudimentary case for it out of a contractor's clipboard. If anybody's ever seen one of those aluminum clipboards that open up and they're hollowed out, works beautifully as one of these, but wasn't really the design I was looking for. So I actually found a designer here in Philly, and I guess 8 iterations later, it turned into this. You know, that's the thing. Every step along this weird trip, there was encouragement. People saying, wow, that's bizarre. And if you go to trade shows, people would like swarm around it. They just couldn't believe what it was. So I kept saying, John, I think there's something going on here. And he was like, calm down, buddy. But there was a point at which, I should talk about the sort of like the bigger event where I got a very mysterious phone call from some people doing a tech documentary that they wouldn't talk to me about. It's after this, right? I'm going out of order. We're running out of time anyway. So I didn't know what was going on, except they said, would you like to go to Argentina for a documentary? And I said, well, wouldn't want to go to Argentina for a documentary. And it was only later that I found out that it was for this commercial. We're not going to show it here, but if you know what it is, it was the one with the Robin Williams Dead Poets Society voiceover. And it brought such a different feel to it and a lot of attention to the product. That was, the story you tell is great because you weren't expecting it. And I said, John, turn on the TV.
Well, not only was it turn on the TV, it was the Saturday before the Super Bowl 2 years ago. And he said, I assume you're watching the Super Bowl. Call me tomorrow, you'll know when to call me. And I said, well, what are you talking about? And he just laughed and said, trust me, you'll know when to call me. So Sunday came and the Super Bowl was on, and a party, and the first commercial break came on, or whatever, and the second one, and it was Apple. And everybody's watching it. And 2 seconds later, out comes Josh, in the commercial with one of these rigs with the waterfall behind him. And
do you have the picture?
Yeah.
Oh, no, not that one. There is actually a picture of John's TV and living room with the commercial on it. This was also, okay. To me, the bigger thing was that it was the landing page of Apple for a couple of weeks.
Well, so I called him. And I freaked out, and he said, well, now go on the internet, and I popped on the internet, and he was on the front page of Apple's website here, and then not only that, every magazine cover, every back cover of every magazine that you could think of was that picture. Apple advertising on the back of all these magazines, so it was TV, internet, and print. All at once for 6 months during the Super Bowl, the Olympics, and everything else. So, I guess as the story goes, he called me after we were tinkering around for a year, and me telling him it made no sense. He finally said, hey, I really need you to run this business. I can't do this anymore.
I was like, these guys think it makes sense. I think it was something, like our minds sort of changed. It was like the world saying, and again, this product has been encouragement every step of the way. This was one, it was just saying, you guys should check this out. You should keep going down that sewage pipe. I guess to stay with your metaphor.
Right. Well, the other thing is, so it turns out the way we ended up here today, actually, is this was never developed for, educators, for schools, for journalists, who actually are our biggest markets, schools and educators and journalists. It was developed because Josh had a passion, about film and how to capture content. And it turns out that 4 years later, schools throughout the world are our biggest market. I think 70% of our sales are to schools and universities, K through 12, whatever. And so there's a big conference every year. This year, just coincidentally, it happened to be in Philadelphia. A big technology educators conference. So we had a booth there, and there's 25,000 people there. And all of a sudden, when you see 2 teachers that we had from 5th grade or something walk by, and they sort of recognize.
I thought we were getting sent to detention. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, so anyway, it turns out they recognized us, we recognized them, and that was in the summer. And we put 2 and 2 together, and we've been talking ever since about coming here and doing this and getting Padcasters here. But it was all fortuitous that all that happened. And again, it was fortuitous that, again, going down that road that you just don't know. I mean, who knew that schools would be our biggest market? So I just think you have to keep an open eye. So this is...
Okay, well, I guess you can see the product here. It's really, look, the iPhone and iPad are great. I don't know if any of you have wind of independent film. There's a film called Tangerine that's been really well reviewed. It's doing the circuit. It was shot on an iPhone 5. And no one knew until he whipped his phone out at Sundance and said, oh, by the way, this was my primary camera. What's going to happen in the best case scenario is that won't be the thing that's important about that film. I think what's going to be important is that's a good film. And if you can make it here and it creates an environment where people feel comfortable, if it's something that, if it's the right tool for the job, it'll just be about what's going on with story, with actors, and I think that's a great advancement. What I can do is take that great product and give it a better microphone, allow you to add lighting to it, put it on a tripod or other support. And that's really been the whole thing, is, it's a great piece of gear, but I don't want to break it.
Yeah, so, and then again, what started out, I guess to conclude here, is what started out as one little case. I now think we have a product line of 20 different products for every size: iPad, iPhone, accessories, lights, microphone, lenses, adapters, shades, stands, all sorts of things. So what started out, again, as this little tiny thing is now ballooned into a full product line that Apple will be carrying, I guess, in the next couple of weeks.
We're not allowed to talk about that.
Yeah.
It should be on the Apple online store in about a month. So that is great news. Again, it's like, something we never could have seen coming. And actually, the funny thing is, once we realized that was a possibility, we fought very hard to do it. And I think there's something about determination in your slides where we said, we got to find these people. And we hunted them down. And a year later, we're sitting at a table with them in Cupertino. So, but most of this stuff is strict NDA. Those guys are so weird.
We're actually at the honor code here, I think.
That's true. You just can't say anything to them, but they will find you.
So, I think we're running out of time, but I think we talked a lot about the rewards, and then we'll only spend a couple minutes here. But obviously there's a risk to all this, and there are some drawbacks. Mainly, it boils down to: are you willing to take a risk? Are you willing to make a sacrifice? Are you really willing to take that other road when all your friends are going down the normal path? Are you willing to go down this other path to an unknown? And you really don't know what's going to happen. It might all fall apart. You might lose your money. You might work all those hours for nothing. It's a lot of stress. It's a lot of things to do. It depends if you consider those drawbacks. If you do, then you're probably not an entrepreneur. But that's okay. And I think entrepreneurs fail. I think entrepreneurs fail for all the same reasons that anybody fails in anything. You don't put in the work, you don't put in the research, you don't put in the commitment, the time, whatever it takes. So failing is, the market may never mature, your customers may never buy it, but that all happens because, sometimes you don't control those things, but other times you just didn't put in the work to analyze what you're doing. That goes from homework, sports, business, anything. So
it's funny, my 11-year-old in middle school is wondering why he's getting bad grades in math, and it's oddly enough because he's not doing his homework. Craziest thing ever.
There you go.
How many people in here, I just wanted to show of hands if I can see you, how many people of you think you know what you want to do with your lives? You don't need to. I just want to see. Okay, that's a healthy smattering. I think it's, I don't know. I certainly, maybe I did by the time I was a sophomore. We can take some questions if you want to.
Let's just play this one last movie.
You want to show the most inspirational clip in the history of cinema?
Yeah.
Hopefully this will set you in the right direction.
Well, and again, like Shawshank, the point of concluding this is, again, the theme of you really have to sacrifice for an unknown. And while you see all the glory, there's a lot of hard work that goes into before you achieve that. And just pursue your dreams, and maybe good things will come. So we'll show this, and then we'll do some Q&A. And I'm a hockey player.
2 days later, the miracle was made complete. My boys defeated Finland to win the gold medal. And went from behind once again. As I watched them out there celebrating on the ice, I realized that Patty had been right. It was a lot more than a hockey game. Not only for those who watched it, but for those who played it.
often been asked in the years since Lake Placid, what was the best moment for me? I was here. The sight of 20 young men with such different backgrounds, now standing as one. Young men willing to sacrifice so much of themselves, all for an unknown. A few years later, the U.S. began using professional athletes for the games, dream teams. I always found that term ironic because now that we have dream teams, we guess I will never get to dream. But on one weekend, as America and the world watched, a group of remarkable young men gave the nation what it needed most. A chance for one day, not only to dream, a chance, once again, to believe.
We now lead this class in the national anthem, maybe? So, I think we should open the floor to questions if there's time, or if anybody has any. Please don't ask why we didn't choose Seabiscuit or any of the Rockies or Rudy to end the program. We don't have any questions. I'm sorry, if there is one, ask it. Can we show you how it works?
Anything from Mrs. Apter.
My mom's here. Couldn't be prouder. Actually, she was proud this morning. By 10 o'clock, she was like, oh my God. So, it's... all you do is turn it on, start shooting. So easy, my mother could use it. Once you capture the video, you take it into a program like Pinnacle Studio, edit it and upload it, and that's it. And then hopefully Pinnacle doesn't crash like it just did there. This wasn't supposed to be a live demo, troublemaker. But at any rate, a lot of these programs will allow you to edit right in them. So you can shoot in a program like Filmmaker, it starts putting the clips into a timeline, and you can export and edit that timeline right from the app. So it's designed to be incredibly simple and also very professional.